Hello everybody, this is Kirby Over Yonder, and the most recent Adventure Time Distant Land special, Together Again, is packed with things for me to analyze. It's almost overwhelming just how loaded this special is, to the point where I'm gonna have to make multiple different analysis videos about the special, in addition to my review of it once Distant Lands finishes. So for my first of at least 3 Together Again analysis videos, let's start from the beginning and talk about that big old dream sequence Finn has, because I think it says a lot about his character. Spoilers ahead. Part 1. Finn and Jake. So this episode starts off pretty atypically for a Distant Lands special. After the normal Distant Lands intro, we actually get the intro to the original series. We even get a title card stating Finn and Jake, again, very reminiscent of the original series. This is done to make us feel like we're watching a classic Adventure Time episode, but I also feel like it's a part of Finn's dream itself. Because the dream itself basically is a classic Adventure Time episode, with Finn and Jake going on this wacky adventure to eat this 50-flavored ice cream. In fact, if you're familiar with the series, this should remind you of the Season 2 episode, The Pods, in which one of the 3 pods in that episode is filled with infinite ice cream. Even taking a look at Finn's physical appearance, it's basically exactly like how he looked in the first 2 seasons, with 2 human, non-cursed arms and the golden sword. The only thing off is Finn's voice being much more lower-pitched like in the later seasons than the high-pitched puberty voice he has in the first couple seasons. But anyways, in the very next scene, Finn and Jake see the Ice King kidnapping Lumpy Space Princess and Turtle Princess, so they decide to chase after him. But on their way, they fight a few snow golems, 2 of which resemble Peacemaster and Gumball, which is strange, but we'll get back to that in a minute. The way Ice King is portrayed here is very black and white, as a very one-note, almost Saturday cartoon-esque villain, and not the more nuanced and interesting person we know he is. Even willing to kill one of the princesses in order to marry the other one, which is interesting because throughout the series, Ice King has never shown any desire to kill anyone. Not even Finn and Jake. Heck, he even actively saved their lives in the episode Hitman. And even when he would kidnap princesses, he wouldn't attempt to kill one of them, because that would actively go against his goal to marry one of them. So not only did Finn's mind remove all of Ice King's nuances, but also make him seem to be a worse person than he actually is. Keep in mind that ever since Season 3, Finn's known the true nature of the Ice King, and why he is the way that he is. So why is his brain doing this? I mean, hey, Finn's having this dream as he just died, so obviously by now he should know this. Well, I think the reason why Finn's brain is doing this is because those first 2 seasons were the best time in Finn's life. It was a time where Finn and Jake were able to just go around, adventure, and fight monsters. No trauma, no heartbreak, no tough decisions or fate of the world business. Just Finn and Jake goofing off and having fun. Not saying that Finn's life has been miserable ever since Season 3 or anything, it's just that he was generally more consistently happy in the first 2 seasons. But after the scene, something interesting happens. So Finn and Jake go to defeat a bunch of giant worms attacking a library, and once they're done, they fist bump. However, when that happens, Finn's arm makes a metal-sounding noise, and Jake says, "Ow." This causes Finn to look at his arm in confusion. Finn loses his arm twice throughout Adventure Time, and the second time it gets replaced with a robot arm, which he has up until the end of the original series. What I think this moment represents is Finn's brain reminding him that there were traumatic things that happened in his life, and that it wasn't just fun adventures with Jake. Let's go back to those snow golems from earlier. As I said before, they very closely resemble Peacemaster and Peebee's Uncle Gumball. Not only are they both villains that appear relatively late in the show's run, but neither of them are your stereotypical Adventure Time monster. Peacemaster was a conspiracy theorist dedicated to purging Ooh of all things he considered dark, including Princess Bubblegum. And Gumball was Peepy's uncle, whom she created, and after being lobotomized for hundreds of years, declared war against Princess Bubblegum. I find it interesting that both of these characters are related to Princess Bubblegum. The longer the series went on, the more Finn was exposed to the darker aspects of Princess Bubblegum and the Candy Kingdom as a whole, which very well represents Finn's loss of innocence. So to sum up part 1 of this analysis, the emotional side of Finn's brain is only making him remember the positive aspects of his life, whereas the logical side of Finn's brain is subtly trying to remind Finn of the darker aspects of his life. But unfortunately, it only stays subtle for so long. Part 2. Finn and Jake are dead. So after Finn and Jake fist bump, the two get snatched up by a giant bird. The two manage to escape, but are then confronted with an empty grave, which Jake starts crawling towards, much to Finn's dismay. As I alluded to before, there's not much particularly subtle about this scene. It's obviously about Jake's death, the gravestone even changes to say "Rest in peace, Jake." However, I think the scene may have revealed how Finn and Jake both reacted to Jake's death. Jake is very accepting of his own death. He knows when his time is up and is perfectly fine with no longer being around, even advocating for his own death. Finn, on the other hand, is too stubborn to let Jake go and is actively trying to prevent his death, even having a full-on mental breakdown once Jake does die. This is actually very similar to the Season 3 episode, The New Frontier. In that episode, Jake was downright pursuing his own death because he thought it was his destiny, where Finn was begging him not to go through with it. With the major difference being that in that episode, Jake doesn't actually die. If Finn's reaction to losing Jake was anywhere even close to being like this, then it must have been terrifying. When we see Finn at the end of Obsidian, he seems to be happy and at peace with Jake's death. But at the end of Together Again, we learn that Finn was truly lost without Jake, and was probably never the same after Jake died. But let's back up a bit, because I don't think this is just about Jake's death. Going back to the bird scene, before Finn and Jake escape, we see a nest on top of the treehouse. And in that nest, we see the skeletons of a bunch of characters we know and love. Let's go back to a moment earlier on in the sequence. Trust me, we'll get back to this. After Finn saves Lumpy Space Princess and Turtle Princess, Jake says, "You did it, Finn, everyone's alive." And at first, Finn's happy with himself, but then he randomly starts crying. Why would Finn be crying after hearing that everyone's alive? I think Finn subconsciously blames himself for the death of others. Finn's whole deal is helping other people. He's even willing to sacrifice his own life for the sake of others. And in the Dead Worlds, we see a ton of characters from the original series. There are a ton of people in Finn's life that he knows have died. And that's why we see those skeletons in the nest, because they represent Finn's guilt for not being able to save everyone. And losing Jake was probably the icing on the cake of that guilt. But little does Finn know that he and Jake would be the ones to save all life as we know it from the Lich. Kirby, out.